Hello. Today we are talking about civility and disagreement in English 104. So, this literature review explores how rhetoric and composition courses can model and teach civil discourse. We live in a time of great rhetorical incivility and a breakdown of communication and the ability to communicate with people that have diametrically opposed views. And this is at all levels, from the top down, from the bottom up, and college courses get in the crosshairs of those things. But anyone interested in the democratic project in America, I think, is interested in this idea of how do we come together and live together and resolve conflict together, even as we as Americans have very different political views. So one way that people have tried to convince and persuade others to agree with their position is through a kind of liberal rationalism. This is an Enlightenment kind of idea that if we can just show people what logic is, this is my summary of the Enlightenment ideas, but we can just show people how microscopes work, and we can just explain the scientific process, then people will be like, haha, now I understand, and my rational brain is convinced, and now I'm going to change. Facts have been presented, and now I am persuaded. But it doesn't always work like that. And I argue, and other smart people that I am referencing have argued, that this kind of liberal rationalism is maybe not the best way to convince people to change their ideas about things, but instead, rhetoric might be a better discipline to explain and to work within the confines of the human experience, which include not just rationalism, but also irrational things like emotions and beliefs and values and community kind of built relationships that are going to affect how a person perceives new information or new facts. So there's lots of different things I talk about in my paper, but the one for this video that I'm going to focus on is rhetorical listening. So rhetorical listening is an idea that Krista Ratcliffe writes a lot about. She argues that rhetoric teachers have done a great job of teaching reading and writing and speaking, but have neglected to talk about listening, and that it has been undervalued in the academy, and we have overvalued the idea of how can I change your mind as opposed to what should I change my mind about, and teaching students how to do that. So here are some practical ideas. So the first one is maybe spend time in class talking about the value of listening. You could do this when you're talking about audience analysis, talking about paying attention to what the audience cares about, listening to what the audience cares about. If you are going to give your argument to a specific audience, you should listen to what they have to say and what they value. You could practice listening together. So this could be maybe a YouTube video, but also like a person speaking. You could have like students speak, practice speaking, or you give a speech. And you could talk about how to listen together. And one way that you could talk about listening as a kind of activity would be to note take, but not just note take about maybe what they're saying or what stands out to you, but instead how they're building their arguments, where the transitions are in real time, writing down not what the vibes are, but how they're constructing their argument, and then what the vibes are as far as the emotions in the room or the way that their tone is affecting their overall argument, what works, what doesn't, and why. But mostly at the beginning, it's not about the why, it's about what. This is not as much a time when you're writing your notes, when you're listening to this video or whatever, you are not thinking so much about the why. That is going to come after. And you can do a kind of analysis of why did they argue that way once you've gotten your arms around what they have argued, and what does the way that they've argued about this show you what this person values. You could also do this in like a simulation between two people. You could take it down to like a dialogue. You could have one person simulate a speaker and another person be the listener, and this person simulate a kind of argument. This could be a political or otherwise, and the listener has to listen and take notes and really try to understand where the speaker is coming from, and then restate to the speaker what their argument is in order to clarify it and make sure that they understand it, but also to make the speaker feel heard. So it's how do we help students build this kind of communicative practice? So what does that have to do with civility? Well, the way that I am thinking about this is we're trying to get students into the space between reception and reaction and spending more minutes in that space of withholding judgment and understanding first. It is not about never having judgment. The judgment is an important part of the rhetorical analysis process, but having students and teaching students how to spend time in this place of just understanding and just getting what is being argued, how it's being argued, and why. This is not about a kind of neutrality, a kind of faux neutrality of the professor to pretend like they don't have political opinions. It is instead a place of abdication of all of yourself to try to understand fully the person in front of you. You are going to be there the whole time, but in this process of active listening, you are not thinking, you're trying very hard to not think about yourself and instead think very hard about what is being argued and then why. And then you can have all of the judgment in the world, all of your emotions and analysis, and it will help. Understanding the arguments will help you refute them better. This is not about getting rid of disagreement. Disagreement is a good thing, and it is a sign of a healthy democracy. And it is important to remember that even as our rhetorical, the incivility in our society gets worse. But understanding and listening to the people in front of us will help us to disagree better and more productively, ideally, because we want our students to be great communicators, not just in how they write, but also in how they speak. And those things, as we all know, are connected. And these are my citations about it.